Hey folks, how are you all doing? Now, today's video a little bit different because we've had a couple of videos on the channel recently about some Dolans and some Canyons and that sort of thing, which have had so many comments, and I've been reading through them and it's fascinating. Now, I asked for those comments, and what I really love about YouTube is that the comments come in, they inform your thinking, you get to hear all your opinions, and so that's the most fascinating thing. So I want this video, I'm going to try and answer some of your questions, give you a bit of an update on where things are at, and just keep that discussion rolling, because the more we talk, the more we discuss, the more we all learn, which is so cool. This is why I'm really enjoying YouTube and this interactivity that we have. Now, one of the big questions really was updates on the various Dolans that we've had in. We've had 3 Dolans in recently, all with frame faults, and we've had a Canyon in recently. So in the last sort of 4 weeks, really. Now, Dolan number 1. This is the grey one that belonged to Graham. I can update you on that. So we built it, and actually a few questions were, how did we fix it? And we got questions as to whether we went in there with cutters and reamers, and that was the right thing to do with all the voids. We didn't really do a lot. We didn't do any cutting. There's no way that frame was going to hold any sort of cutting or reaming. What it was doing was using very light sanding, using Engineer's Blue, which is sort of highlights the high points where the paint overspray was, and just lightly sanding so we get back to a nice flat surface so those bearings can seat properly. And the same with the inside of that fork. Remember, the whole fork was like a hexagon on the inside. Now, most of that was all resin. You could tell because it had like a white sheen to it. And all we did in there was just get a bit of dowling and a rod just to sand that off, just so that the compression bung actually had something to grip onto. And as it gripped onto something, it didn't actually have a stress point. So it wasn't an awful lot of work that we did on that, just enough to get a nice flat surface so the bearings can sit. So there is still paint on the inside. We definitely did not take it back to bare carbon again, or definitely didn't use any reaming and cutting tools. It's just enough to get back to nice flat surfaces. Okay, the update on that frame is that they gave Graham a full refund on all the work that me and Hambini did, so that's good. They also offered Graham a new frame, which is right, even though they've got a 2-year guarantee, and someone quite rightly pointed out in the comments that is against the Consumer Rights Act, which gives you 6 years. I think it's the best thing to do, really, but initially they did offer Graham a new frame and the money required for us to build that new frame for him. They've sort of since rescinded on that, and they've now driven up to his house, taken his Dolan DR1 away back to their factory, and they're building it into another bike for him. I think, to be honest, Graham just wants to go out and ride his bike. He's sort of a bit sick of it all, really. But that's interesting. It means we won't get to see the new frame. So if there are any defects, we won't know until we see it again for service. So fingers crossed. I'd imagine that the significant amount of reaming that Hambini gave him, they would be pretty silly to deliver that frame in anything but absolutely perfect condition. So I think we can be reassured that Graham is going to get the bike that he deserves. The second Dolan featured on our Spot the Lemon. We didn't really make a big deal about it being a Dolan. It wasn't the point of the video. It was more like, here's an example of what it should look like, and here's an example of what it shouldn't look like. They're both open mould frames, similar sort of value, and sort of idea in what you should be looking for as a consumer, designed to be consumer advice, really. And the owner of that bike, he taken the frame back to Dolan with all the defects and said, can I have a refund, please? He got given the white glove service. He got shown around their museum, if you like. Got offered a free bike fit. I don't know why, because he obviously got a new Sonelli, which we had bike fitted and stuff for him, so whatever. Then offered him a new frame, but only on the pretense that they're allowed to take all of his equipment off the Snelly that we built and build it onto a new Dolan, which is a bit weird. But there we go, and that's as much as I know about that particular one. And the Dolan that is the aluminium one with the ovalised bottom bracket, yeah, we fixed it again using that method of Engineer's Dicom and just taking out the high points and getting that back to a nice round finish. And when we put the bottom bracket bearings back in, it was spinning absolutely perfectly. So yeah, anyway, that's all fixed. The Canyon, the customer he's taken it back. He's like, I'm sick of this now. I just want done. Peak Talk commented about my theory about the axles. Now, I didn't have an awful lot of time with this. It was meant to be a quick fire video that just says, if you're getting delivered a Canyon, check all these things, or not just Canyon, but any direct-to-consumer brand, check all these things before you go out and ride it, because I think a lot of riders wouldn't necessarily know what to check. Anyway, the quick update on the axle. My theory, I think, was a little bit wrong, but I'm still not 100% sure on the solution because we didn't get time to fully fix it. But what I found was that the mech hanger, which is where the threads are, if I loosen the bolts holding the mech hanger in, I could move it into better alignment with the frame, and by doing so allowed me to probably get another turn on the axle and actually thread it through a little bit further, which is a bit weird because it was sort of starting to damage the threads as it was butting up against the frame. Now, I did that and the wheel was a lot steadier, but it wasn't right. There was still like a little click of movement, and you could see the little end caps moving. So I'm still not 100% convinced that that's the full solution, but I hadn't spent any more time with it than that. You can definitely see as you rock it and you can hear it, there's like a little click of movement, which by that time the customer was like, I'm done, I'm sending it back to Canyon and I'm starting again. So yeah, that's where we're up to with that. Okay, a couple of your excellent questions. So David George says, truly awful. I just returned a Giant Defy for a lot less than this. The Canyon is a £7,000 bike. To say it's not fit for purpose is an understatement. Send it back. Tell everyone you know how crap it was. These companies need to learn what it is and isn't acceptable when extracting this much money from customers. Now, regardless of the price, any bike of any value, a 200 quid kids bike, £7,000 pro race bike, they all need to be fundamentally safe. It doesn't matter the price, that is just a fundamental. The other fundamental is that parts actually need to fit and they actually need to be aligned. Like, that is just two things that absolutely have to happen, or three things: safety, fit and alignment. That's non-negotiable no matter what the price is. Return to Giant Defy. So interesting, so Giant are doing a similar strategy where you can actually buy a Giant online, get it delivered to a local store and collect it, and so, which is unusual actually, because this is a trend that's happening quite a lot with Giant Specialized, is that they're starting to sell direct to consumer, so they're missing out the bike shop, but these brands are now trying to use the bike shop as the final level of quality control. So it's hard to say that Canyon is particularly bad, because quite often sort of the quality issues that you saw on the Canyon have been fixed by the bike shop. So if you were to buy a Trek, a Specialized, whatever, the level of assembly required by the shops over the years has got less and less and less, as the bike shops have demanded from the brands that they do more and more assembly at the factory, so that their mechanics have less and less assembly time to do in the shop, so increase profitability. But they still have that last level, and also you've got that direct line of communication, if you like. So if you do have issues, they kind of get sorted by the bike shop where you brought it, and most bike shops are small, local, independent. They really value their customers, and you probably wouldn't know that these things existed, or if they did, they'd get put right in that free 6-week checkup, etc., and we'd all move on. The difference is, I think with Canyon is, and all the direct-to-consumer brands, I'm not just talking Canyon, but like Dolan and YT Industries and all of those, is that I think when this business model started to come to the fore, it was very much picked up by quite keen bike experts who kind of knew the value of what they were looking at. They could look at the value of the components and the frame and stuff like that, and they could make some really good decisions on looking at the frame geometry and stuff like that. I think as these become more and more popular, they're moving out of that early adopter phase and into more of a mass market phase, and the mass market isn't quite necessarily as bike savvy educated as those initial early adopters who were happy to go, well, I'll tweak up my own headset, or I'll just tighten that bolt up, or I'll nip down to the local bike shop and just get that brake bled and not think too much of it. So this is a problem, I think, which is arising. Okay. Tom and Rachel's first dance. Imagine if they never noticed the rear wheel, this is on the Canyon, could have cross-threaded the frame, which I bet Canyon would blame end user, or worse, could work loose and the rear wheel come out. That is shocking. I dread to think of the cost. Now, this was interesting because what would have been the consequences of that rear wheel issue? I don't think the rear wheel would have come out. I wouldn't be concerned about that. What I'm more concerned about is that things were just moving out of alignment, and obviously that wobble. So I'd be more concerned about having a misshift and the chain getting caught up and that ripping the rear mech and damaging the rear mech. And yeah, if anyone's ever had a rear mech catastrophe, you know that when those go, they sort of spin around, they break the mech hanger, the mech slams into the frame, sometimes can break the frame. It can make a real mess, especially if you're like powering up a hill and everything just crunches. I think that would have been quite likely in that situation. So, and yeah, I think if that's happened, they might have blamed the customer because they've been riding around on it thinking, okay, this is a bit, doesn't handle, around corners quite how I imagined it would be, a little bit disappointed with the ride handling, not necessarily realising that, that was going on at the back. So, yeah, and I think if that happened, I do think that Canyon would have passed the cost on. Okay, blah, blah says, unacceptable. These companies are going to fail in the long run. Things like this make it look like they're in it for the quick buck. I hope Canyon respond to your video. Are they going to fail? I don't think they're going to fail in the long run. I think we talked about that with the early adopters and the mass market, and I honestly think that this direct-to-consumer model is going to be the one that wins out because bike prices are absolutely insane right now. They are so expensive. And the reason they're so expensive is there's too many layers of delivery and assembly and profit to be made. And we need to strip some of that out. The bike industry used to get a whole lot more efficient. Now, how they're going to become better in their reputation is I really think they need bike shops like us more than they think they do for fixing these sort of issues without the whole hassle of putting it back into a box, sending a driver, delivering it back, someone going back into their factory, joining the queue, being fixed, goes back in a box, delivered, customer checks it again. You're still relying on quite a lot of customer interaction. Now, there's quite a lot of bike shops that just won't work on direct-to-consumer bikes. We're not like that. We don't sell bikes here. I think our business model is becoming more and more popular. So a bike shop that doesn't sell bikes is becoming more and more popular. And we'll take this sort of work in quite happily. And I think what's probably going to happen is that they'll start to formalise the arrangements with bike shops like us. When there's someone local that they've had a relationship with, we can talk to their service department, a bit like how we work with Bosch e-bikes maybe, and that becomes a better way of dealing with it. So I don't think they'll fail, but I think they've got some problems that they need to get on top of. Stefan says, what annoys me most, bike manufacturers transfer the hassle right to the shop and us mechanics knowing about the issues. I work in a cube store in Germany, hey Germany, and every second bike has problems with flat mount tabs, not square, overfilled brakes, poor assembly in general, It says that Cube explained these problems with new personnel at production line, which isn't trained enough. Now, some really good points in here. I'm going to remember that at these factories that carbon frames come delivered fresh off of Far East delivery on a big container ship, get delivered to a mechanic's workbench. They often sort of join like car style assembly lines. So there might be someone that, installs the bottom brackets and just installing bottom brackets all day long. And that's all they've ever been trained to do. It might just be running cables, whatever it might be. So it's definitely like a production line thing. And then someone at the end would just do a final check. But they're busy. It's hard to do the staff training in a situation like that. But what he's saying here is in the bike store in Germany is that the amount of cubes that are coming through to his shop that he has to then put right actually at the shop. So the final bit of quality control. So what's already gone through the final assembly and quality control at the bike shop, it should really only be pre-delivery inspections that are required. But they're having to do quite a lot of remedial work to put these frames right, which comes back to that whole argument earlier about the direct-to-consumer brands missing out that level. Attila says, these chainrings will never work with the Dura Ace 9200 properly. This is talking about the Canyon again that's had the rotor cranks fitted as opposed to the proper Dura Ace ones to have the power meter, etc. Now, I think they've done this because they haven't got the stock of the proper Dura Ace cranksets with the power meter. So they've offered the customer an alternative, which is rotor ones. There is no doubt that if you are running a full Shimano system, that you will get cleaner, crisper shifting. There's no reason why the rotor ones won't work, but they will not work quite as cleanly and quite as sharply as a full Shimano system. So I don't say it will never work, but it will never work as cleanly and as nicely. So I totally agree. So Jade says, this is why you always buy local. Buying from a bike shop has many perks. First thing is the bike will be built properly and actually safe, especially when buying high-end bikes such as this. If you went out and took that on the roads after you unboxed it, chances are you would have gotten hurt, crashed, or something on the bike would have broke. Like, yeah, we talked about that earlier. Maybe even all of those. I do not recommend buying consumer direct. Buy from your local shop, because oftentimes there'll be more perks other than the bike actually being safe. Like, I could not agree more, except that there is no way that we can even get close to competing on price. Like, that Canyon, we got no chance. Even if we sold the bike at our trade price, you know, if we brought all the prices in and just passed the trade prices on those and then just charged a bit for the labour, we still would not get close to the price of that Canyon for the spec that was on it. Just no way. So I get it. With that in mind, it's unsustainable. But I think, again, there's too many layers of profit to try and be made. So if you think Shimano obviously selling, when they leave from the Shimano factory, some goes to, you know, country distributors. In the UK, it's a company called Madison, and then we buy from Madison, and then etc. But then the brands, like Dolan is a good example, will buy directly from Shimano, get a nice hefty discount, at a really good discount. So they're missing out 2 layers of profitability there to get those really, really good prices. And then I think what you're finding is that a lot of the components are working themselves into, we call it that grey imports or grey market. What's actually happening is that companies like Dolan and Canyon or whatever over-order massively, get even bigger discounts from Shimano, and then once they're overstocked with that Shimano, they can make more profit by selling them on to the likes of Sigma Sports and Merlin and stuff, which is why when you buy a rear mech from these companies, they definitely don't come in proper Shimano packaging. They come in like just plastic bags. They call it OEM packaging. So that's where that's coming from. So there is no way that a bike shop like us will be able to get close. However, if you do buy from a bike shop like us, you will get amazing service, because when you buy a bike from us, it's a whole sort of collaborative relationship building process where you come in for a cup of coffee and we'll have a really good chat about what it is that you want. And we won't just go, we'll really try and understand what it is that you want to experience from your bike and really try and dial down into the key words. You know, and it often comes down to things like, I want it to be really confident, I just want to be really happy on it. And once you get down to those sort of adjectives and verbs and sort of descriptive words, you can really get into the customer's mind and go, right, okay, I think I get an idea. And then you can build out something with, you know, with the wheels, the tyres, the spoke tension, you know, even the nipple choice, all those sort of things build up the big picture, and you can justify every single decision. And that is quite a long collaborative approach, which just adds to the cost. So you do get exactly what you want, but it's not cheap. So we totally understand. Okay. Mr. Pilberg says, great video. As a result, I'm considering any future purchases as frame only so I can inspect before I build. Research is 90% of the work. With more honest and informative videos like yours, the process is considerably easier. So thank you. I agree. One of the things I really said in the videos was I often doubt when you can't buy the frame itself, because these bike brands, Specialized, Trek, Canyon, Dolan, whatever, the only thing that they make is the frame. Like, I know that sometimes you'll see Specialized written on the side of a tyre or something. Specialized don't make that tyre. It's made by a bigger tyre manufacturer like Hutchinson or something. And wheels, you know, Trek have got the Bontrager brand, but they brought the Bontrager brand, but that's made somewhere else. It's all those hubs are made by companies like Joytech and Novatech and that sort of thing. They just take the branding off or put their own branding on. So the only thing that they really sell is the frame. And I really wish that the bike brands would take more ownership and more pride out of the thing that they actually make. Like, I would love it if I could buy a frame, any frame from their range, and it gets delivered in a box, a bit like when you buy SRAM components and you open the box up and it's all laid out beautifully, and there's an instruction manual in there and all the little frame components. And you know, maybe like when you buy a set of wheels from someone, they've, you know, the mechanic that's built the wheel has signed their name on it. It's quite a common trade. Imagine if you could do that with a frame that someone's gone through there and said, yeah, the bottom bracket is this size and the headset is exactly this size and the frame is like this, and I'd love it. You know, I'd love that whole opening a box experience with a frame that you just go, oh yeah, someone's really spent some time making sure that this is going to go well. We did that video about Look, a frame, and like, when we build a bike from someone like Look or Time, they're not the only really good ones, Pinarello's pretty good, is everything just slots together so well. It's really hard to explain, but there's no like rough edges inside the frame, so when you're doing internal cable routing, everything just glides through. It's so easy to work on. The brakes, you just literally just bolt them on and they just line up. It's beautiful. The bottom bracket just slots in. It's incredible. It's so nice. So anyway, so Stephen asks, with all of the cheap carbon frames, is it better to invest in good aluminium frame instead? No, not necessarily. Plenty of aluminium frames have their problems as well. Stay vigilant. There's no guarantee that you're going to get good quality is by buying aluminium. Love not the world. Anyone selling frames that doesn't offer a full prepping service isn't worth buying from. Totally agree. Comes back to what I was saying about the whole love to just open a box and go, yep, this is perfect. Like, it should be prepped, should be aligned, everything should fit. That's it. Jules says, it would be scary to ride a bike like this, but what would be even scarier would be to someone on a rider sportive realising that some of the riders in front of you are riding cheap carbon frames. Yes, now I haven't seen an awful lot of catastrophic frame failures. I've seen frame failures not that have ever been catastrophic. You've always been able to ride home, or like a chainstay is sort of semi-snaps and gone a bit loose and floppy. Haven't really seen anything majorly catastrophic like you might have seen on some of the Pro Tour races. I have seen, though, is catastrophic failures of cheap carbon wheels, and they are way more terrifying, but that's a subject for another day, I think. Two wheels are best. Great video, thank you. I've just come over from Hambini and pleased to see Dolan. I've gone some way to Morolating. Where's that word come from? I don't know. Have you even pronounced it right? The customer's issues. That said, I really found your comments on the issues interesting. I feel you gave a balanced view of the issue, and you reminded me of what I've always known, being age 71, that you buy a bike either for the components or the frame set. So it kind of comes back to what I'm saying, what it is that you really prioritise, and I would say that wheels first, frame second, components third. There we go. Thanks for subscribing and the kind feedback. Kid Carbon says, geez, that's simply appalling and shows a lack of QC standards. Thanks for discussing this topic. Very informative and factual manner. Are you able to share the owner's thoughts on what you discovered? Yeah, I did that at the start of the video. I'm glad that you're interested in, and quality control is just, it's bare minimum stuff. Come on. And Dev says, one look at that steerer tube and it's a no for me. Are you reaming the resin, etc.? I'll leave this up on the thing so you can read it. No, we didn't ream the resin. I described that at the top. This is the one that raised concerns. I was like, no, we wouldn't do something like that. I know where you're up to with the steerer tube. It's really tough. There's so much material there. And what we often find with these cheaper bikes is that they are massively overbuilt to the point where some of these cheaper carbon frames can be a lot heavier than an aluminium bike because they are massively overbuilt to compensate for, you know, manufacturing problems and voids and God knows what else. So they can actually be remarkably heavy. Now, I'm not a carbon expert or an aerodynamic expert or anything, but I am a mechanic and I know what things are fitting. So the point of my video was things need to fit, things need to align, and if they don't, there's a problem. There's no reason to doubt safety with the knowledge that I've got, because there was plenty of material there. And you would hope that Dolan would have assessed that if there was a cause for safety. There's no obvious cracks or anything like that. It was just poorly manufactured. There might be with anything. I think if you follow some of the other channels and they use the ultrasound, even some of the best carbon frames on the market, the most expensive ones, have hidden defects that you can't necessarily always see without really non-destructive testing methods. So yeah, there was so much material on that steerer tube. I had no reason to doubt safety, but I get where you're coming from. Okay, I think that's all. That was awesome. Please keep the comments coming, because it's really inspiring, really helpful to know the experiences that you're having out there, how little independent bike shop like us that doesn't sell bikes can help add some knowledge to you when you're buying your bikes. And I hope that we've gone some way to helping you make some really good decisions. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.